Hey everybody, welcome to another Twitter live stream. Today's topic, I'd like to discuss with you the news and the implications for everybody of the announcement that happened last week from the Financial Actions Task Force, FATF, not good with my acronyms. So just while we're waiting for more people to arrive, this relates very closely to a stream that I gave 2 days ago and it gave you a newbie's guide for how to purchase Bitcoin and the 3 things you must know before actually purchasing Bitcoin. And also it gives the 3 new habits that you're going to have to adjust to as the world's user experience of traditional money gets worse and worse and worse. As more and more people start to onboard into the crypto sphere. So what the Financial Actions Task Force announcement actually means in a nutshell is that cryptocurrency exchanges are going to have to comply to similar standards as banks. And what that means is that the user experience of transferring money around a cryptocurrency exchange is going to get harder, tougher, worse, and it's going to conform to the 3 forces. So remember what I talked about in that live stream. If you haven't watched it already, just check out my Twitter feed and go back to that video. You'll see one on a newbie's guide to purchasing Bitcoin and the 3 things you need to know and the 3 habits. But I talked about how when you deposit your money at the bank becomes the legal owner of your money. When they become the legal owner of your money, they can spend it as they choose, or they can get in the way of a transaction and tell you how you should spend your money. That it relates to this Financial Action Task Force concept. And the 3rd one was about the monetary policy, which is less relevant here. So return to that video if you're interested in those. But essentially, crypto gives you the opportunity, Bitcoin gives you the opportunity to earn your own money and spend your own money without having to tell people what you're doing with that. But what that requires is that you operate within the Bitcoin to Bitcoin, hardware wallet to hardware wallet, peer-to-peer electronic cash system. But once you now onboard into fiat traditional currency, so if you're taking your dollars, your pounds, your euros, your renminbi, your won, your Korean won, and you're converting them into crypto, then the exchange is required by law in order to get lots and lots of data on you. And now when you transfer them, they're required to kind of treat it like a bank wire, which is that they have to get additional data and information as a regulated institution. So what this does is it creates a 2-tiered economy, basically. One where the traditional fiat system and then the crypto peer-to-peer hardware wallet to hardware wallet system. And if you want to onboard and offboard from one to the other, you're just going to have to get used to that it's going to be a very tricky process. You're going to have the exchange is going to have to comply with the standards at which they have to comply with is going to be brought up to speed with, much like a bank wire. Now, an international bank wire, when you send over $10,000, is subject to much greater scrutiny, source of funds, source of wealth, you having to provide all data about where the money actually came from, how you obtain the money, where it originated from, where it's going, how you accumulated that money. And everything that you have to give when transferring larger sums of money within the traditional financial system. So it's actually very good for crypto adoption in some sense, but it's very constrained to crypto onboarding. And onboarding from fiat to crypto is going to be, a bit more onerous than it has traditionally been. But at the same time, it's brought up to standards, which will bring more opportunities for crypto exchanges. And essentially that's what it does. Now, the real moral questions that we need to ask ourselves is that while the goal of, ever since 9/11, we've essentially lost the right to privacy. And we've come to a society that accepts that we don't own our own money, and if we want to spend it, we're going to have to get the buy-in from other people, and money is no longer ours. As a society, we've become accustomed to that, and we've accepted that. And the questions around personal freedom and sovereignty are going to have to really come into question when people have a choice. And the choice is that you can give up your privacy and freedom at the point of onboarding into the crypto industry. But once you're in the crypto industry, then you can freely transfer that if you go and follow the guide and get a Trezor wallet or a Ledger wallet and start operating within that. Now, the real question comes is what, and this is the implication for you as an individual person that you need to consider. I'm assuming you're not a cryptocurrency exchange because there's massive implications for them. But as you as an individual user, which I assume the majority of people are, you're going to have to consider a few things. So firstly, I talked about how the economics of Bitcoin are designed whereby the value rewards the saver over time because of its fixed supply. And as it gets more and more utility and more useful over the year, the only way to reflect that is in the price, as every 4 years the supply halves until we reach this finite supply of 21 million, and there's no political influence on the monetary policy. It's enforced by maths and code, and that can never change. And so what happens when you have crypto that becomes worth a lot more in the future? Well, there's a couple of things you need to consider. If you hold that at an exchange, then you might have initially got on board at an amount that might have been a few $100s or a few $1,000s. But once that crypto becomes worth more, or if that crypto becomes worth more, then when you hit the $10,000 threshold or the $100,000 threshold, or your crypto becomes worth millions of dollars and it's your pension at retirement later, then where you hold it is going to become really, really important. And there's going to be the need for you to, firstly, if you take it off an exchange or take it off a custodial wallet, make sure that you keep records of that, because if it becomes worth a lot more in the future, if you ever want to offboard from crypto, so let's say you initially invested in Bitcoin $1,000, and in 10 years' time it was part of your pension, and you want to now purchase a house and it's worth $1 million and you want to take some of that out, then as a user and individual, make sure that you keep the records. Make sure you have a record trail, source of funds, source of wealth. So the initial money that you sent to Coinbase or the exchange, make sure you can show the records that either came from your salary or your income, or you have a clean audit trail of where that actually came from. And then don't leave it at a bank, an exchange, or any of these intermediary institutions. Get yourself used to these hardware wallets, Ledger and Trezor, so that you can then freely flow that within the crypto economy. And as more and more people are doing it, adoption gets bigger and bigger and bigger as Bitcoin becomes the internet of money. And more people are willing to accept that. But then you're eventually going to have some kind of analysis and record keeping, because when you deposit that at an exchange in order to make, let's say you want to purchase a house, and the person that's selling you the house is not willing to accept crypto or Bitcoin, they only want to accept pounds, dollars, or euros, or whatever your local currency is wherever you are in the world, then you're going to have to actually prove the source of funds, source of wealth, and demonstrate to them how you accumulated that money, because there's going to be a big process when you offboard it. And the last thing you want to do is get caught at a bank where you can't produce that, and therefore they end up shutting down your bank account, or they censor your transaction. But the worst thing you could do is leave it at a Coinbase or at an exchange, and it becomes worth more than this $10,000, pounds, euros, and then you can't withdraw it, and you end up in a scenario where the money's not flowing as crypto should flow. And so really, these financial action task force, what it is essentially is a syndicate of countries that agree to adhere to a certain standard and share all of the data with all of the other countries. So if you transact in one country, then everyone that's a member of the Financial Action Task Force is entitled to receive that data. So in exchange, if they're operating compliantly, they have to file what's called Suspicious Activity Reports, SARs. And those suspicious activity reports are filed with their local regulators, and any member of those exchanges are going to have to be locally regulated and file these suspicious activity reports and collect all the data in and out whenever you transfer it in and out, and whenever you make any different type of transfer. The exchanges are going to have to adjust to that requirement. And really what's going to happen from here is that the member state countries are going to exercise pressure on the non-member countries. And the way that they do that is they do use things like sanctions. And they say, right, well, anyone dealing with this country, financial institutions are no longer allowed to deal with them. Really, it's inflicting one country's ideology on another country's ideology, and we have this big political play whereby countries that don't subscribe to one ideology, and it's a much less democratic process than some might have in their own country. But these are the forces of the world. And really, the end game is similar to the end game in some of the other videos that I was talking about, is that it drives more people to adopt Bitcoin, want to use Bitcoin, and really supports the ecosystem of keeping in the crypto to crypto sphere and actually learning those 3 habits that I talked about so that you can secure your personal wealth. And accept that when you want to go out into the traditional fiat world, you're going to have to be well documented, and you're going to have to make sure that you've got the audit trail, because the user experience of fiat money is going to get worse and worse and worse the further we move into the future. And that's why it's very important to have this force of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency that ends up regulating the regulator, so that when they go too far, people have an exit opportunity, and therefore they have to improve the user experience of traditional money, and they have to review some of these forces that have come into place that are taking away freedom of speech and everybody's personal freedom and privacy, and creating really dangerous attack vectors as well, whereby your data can be hacked, because we're creating all these silos of shared information and shared databases as a regulated institution that we all have to confine to and adhere to. But anyway, just wanted to share with you the implications of that. There's interesting forces at work right now whereby things like GDPR, which are protecting privacy, are working in direct conflict with other goals and agendas of governments, like anti-money laundering. Anti-money laundering requires you to have more data. GDPR requires you to have less data. And these power plays are causing lots of conflicts as this war upon privacy being the next real big war that I think we're going to see on a global scale is really about. And that's the update. I just think that you, as an individual, need to know that it is the important takeaways are that if you purchase it, make sure that you go through that beginner's guide, that newbie's guide that I streamed, purchase it more considered, then make sure that you put it onto a hardware wallet, you create an audit trail of what you've done, and then if it becomes worth a lot more in the future, you can either spend it within the crypto to crypto sphere and help support adoption of people wanting to use it. And when you need to get that out to fiat, just know that there's going to be a lot of friction and all the challenges that you're going to have to go through, just like you would with anything that's denominated in fiat and any asset class that becomes worth more in the future. So that's the takeaway. And do let me know in the comments of the stream other things you'd like me to discuss, other topics you'd like me to share, and I'll endeavor to do that in the future live stream. Thank you, over and out.